element to that cybercrime falls within our investigative purview. If we're dealing with narcotic smuggling, or drug transportation or drug sales, if there's a nexus to an international element, it gives us jurisdiction. You would think of things like weapons, firearms, which are typically ATF's domain. But if that touches an international nexus somewhere, if those guns have been transported internationally, or there's an international influence for the purchase of those weapons or the movement of those weapons, it falls within our jurisdiction. We enforce more laws and regulations for more federal agencies than any other federal government entity. We have about 7,000 special agents, give or take, across the country and throughout the world. We have agents assigned to, not just promoted to be my deputy in New Orleans, is coming from our attaché office in Bangkok, Thailand. He'll be here at the end of the month. So, drug smuggling, money laundering, weapons violations, immigration enforcement type stuff like worksite enforcement and those types of things. We do all that different type of work, all of it. Money laundering is a cornerstone. Money laundering and drugs for us are kind of cornerstones along with child exploitation. But we also do counterproliferation investigations, stuff related to critical technologies being exported from the country, which is, I mean, it's a big deal. We make cases like that all the time. We're the largest supplier of manpower to the Joint Terrorism Task Forces, right, which brings us to Jan 1. January 1st, New Orleans, we had agents mobilized. We were investigating. We were supporting state and local agencies. And when the determination was ultimately made that it was a terrorism event, an act of terrorism, we pivoted and we became a support agency to the FBI, whose primary lane is terrorism investigations. And the rest of my agents were sent forth to work with Louisiana State Police and New Orleans Police to give the city some semblance of security and safety. We just wanted people to know that we were there and that we cared and that we were willing to be there for them and stand up for them and work with them. So that kind of brings us to now the context of who are we to you all as, you know, business people and leaders and people in political positions. HSI, we're now looking at a change in administration. We got a new president coming in on January 20th. And what's that going to look like? Well, it's going to be different. It's going to be a lot different. It's going to be a lot different for a lot of federal agencies, but especially federal law enforcement agencies. In the last 4 years, there wasn't much of an emphasis placed on immigration enforcement. In this administration, we all know there's going to be a great emphasis placed on immigration enforcement. And at least part of that portfolio, at least part of the HSI portfolio, is immigration. It's worksite enforcement, it's I-9 inspection, it's fraud related to immigration benefits. So, you know, like marriage fraud and other types of benefit fraud where people claim to be American citizens to get a benefit or an advantage from the government. So you're going to start seeing more of that. You're likely to see a lot more of the worksite style enforcement throughout the country, not just in this AOR, not just this area of responsibility, throughout the country. You're going to start seeing a lot more I-9 inspections. So for those of you, you know, you may end up getting a summons, actually probably signed by me, saying we need to see all of your I-9s. And they'll go to one of our auditors, and our auditors will go through it, and they'll talk to you about specific I-9s they may have problems with or issues with. When it comes to your offshore businesses, for instance, the United States Customs Service, Legacy Customs Service, had within its purview the enforcement of Jones Act violations. Are any of you familiar with that? So essentially, it's the usage of any kind of vessel in place of a vessel that would be, any use of a foreign vessel that would be used in place of a vessel that was available domestically. So it would keep foreign vessels from operating where American vessels within the economic waters of the United States would be able to operate. Generally speaking, there's not a lot of prosecutions that are involved in that, but there are enforcement penalties that can be levied by CBP, and a lot of that is investigated by HSI. Mike Hebert, I don't know if y'all know him with Customs and Border Protection, came to speak. That's all he does is Jones Act violations. So that's part of that portfolio. When it comes to import and export of things, we had a case not too long ago where we had an American citizen who was on a American flagged platform out in the Gulf, out in international water. So he left Morgan City on an American flag vessel through international waters, still technically in America on that American flag vessel, to that platform, which is also America, sitting out in the Gulf. And we knew he was a suspect in a child exploitation case. We knew that he probably had a lot of really bad stuff on his computers. But we knew also that there were foreign flag ships that were making contact with that platform, which made it such that he had contact with foreign. So when he made his trip back in, our agents were able to interdict him at the port and do what we call a customs or border search of his stuff to find the evidence we were looking for. So those are the kinds of things you might see from us. It's not often that happens, but those are the kinds of things you might see happening with us. Look, the government is big and it's unwieldy. And it's hard to kind of, pigeonhole any one thing that we do effectively. But what I can tell you is that we are accessible. I am accessible. If you have questions, if you have problems, so many of you in here know me. I'm not hard to find. I'm really not. I'm happy to answer any of your questions. If there's some complexity you're facing with some legal issue that involves my agency, I'm happy to answer it for you. And if I can't get you the answer, I have a whole bunch of attorneys that can help me answer those questions for you. But I'm happy to do that. And if it's okay with y'all, I'd like to open it up to some questions now. I know that some of y'all,
what can you say about the Venezuelan gangs that we've been hearing about? And is there any, should we be concerned about that? Or anything we should be aware of or be doing relative to that?
That's actually a good question. So Tren de Agua, TDA, is what we call them. You're going to see a lot of enforcement actions against them in the near future. They are an incredibly violent gang, incredibly violent. And we don't really see them much in this three-state area, which is not to say that we won't see them in this three-state area. But what I can tell you is that we have a very, very active violent gang task force that is based out of New Orleans. And I have agents who are embedded with the New Orleans Police Department, which is not something we normally do. For those of you who are in the room, I know we're at least one former sheriff in here who are familiar with the way feds do things. We normally don't give people to state and local agencies. We usually take people from state and local agencies. But in this case, I've reversed that. I've actually embedded agents with the New Orleans Police Department Special Operations Division and with their gang units, and we're seeing a lot of impact from that. So, I would, obviously keep an eye out for it. Our state and local law enforcement partners are pretty well versed in what to look for when it comes to those gangs, and any support they would need with that, obviously, we'd be ready to bring it. We have an office in Homeland, I have an office in Lafayette, I have one in Baton Rouge, I have one in Lake Charles, the bigger office in New Orleans, and to that end, one of the things I've done, I kind of took a Moneyball approach to how I staff my offices. In New Orleans, we had a bunch of federal agents that were situated, a bunch of HSI special agents that were situated there. But the capacity for the U.S. Attorney's Office there is limited. I mean, they have to prosecute cases for every federal agency that is there. And so we saw a lot of really good cases that would either go unprosecuted or we would spend a lot of time on cases, and it would take a long time between the presentation of a case, the indictment of a case, and to ultimately a conviction. Where in other districts in Louisiana, like the Western District, Judicial District in Louisiana, or the Middle, or any district in Arkansas or Mississippi, we would get a whole lot more in the way of prosecution bandwidth. So I started decentralizing some of those personnel from the SAC office into those smaller offices where they would have greater impact. And so that's what you're starting to see. We're starting to see a rise in statistics and convictions because of that outward movement from the special agent in charge office, but they're within driving distance. So if there's something really bad, say January 1, I can recall all those people within an hour or so to be there to operate. So, but yeah, Tren de Agua is a threat. There are other Latin gangs that we've dealt with, like MS-13, who still pose a threat, and we do actively work them throughout the AOR, throughout the country, actually. Nobody, HSI as a whole is not taking that seriously. That is something we actively address. Our gang investigation units are pretty intense. Anybody else? You can ask me anything, by the way. I'll answer it if I can. Yeah.
Are there any sanctuary cities in the AOR? Do you see the new administration doing things like cutting federal funding to those entities that want to be a sanctuary city and not cooperate with U.S.?
So in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Arkansas, there are no actual sanctuary cities. There are some officials who have chosen not to officially cooperate, but those are few and far between. Largely, we have a good relationship, especially here in Louisiana, with the sheriffs and the chiefs and the mayors. And we've seen, honestly, we've seen kind of a paradigm shift in some of those areas where sanctuary cities existed. Now, I think there's a movement toward supporting a lot of that immigration enforcement. So we're going to see, I feel like we're going to see a lot more of that coming and a lot more cooperation from state and local partners as we go forward. I'm sorry, I'll get you. Yes, sir.
So, we obviously have a new administration coming in, sworn in, I think, next week we got a lot of changes, I would assume, based on all the discussion. Some of the people I've seen nominated for various posts. Mm-hmm. What do you think is going to be the biggest impact on your agency, and what would you like to see happen?
So I'll say this. Yes, it's going to be a significant shift for us. For the last 4 years, we've been limited on how we can enforce laws related to immigration. With this incoming administration, it's going to be wide open as far as that's concerned. Now,
public safety is, to me, above and beyond the most important thing that we can do as a federal agency. Now, some of the stuff I missed when I was telling you all the things we do intellectual property rights enforcement, which is not always related to public safety, although it can be when it comes to counterfeit medications or counterfeit electronics that might be in guided systems for ships and missiles and things like that. I mean, those types of things are important, right? But when it actually comes down to somebody's physical security as it relates to human trafficking or it relates to child exploitation investigations or gang investigations, because those organizations prey on people, that's what I'm going to look for. I'm going to look for that balance. I'll look for the balance between this heightened level of immigration enforcement, which I support. I do. I support that. But it's going to be my job, and it's going to be my balancing act to find that sweet spot so where we can fulfill that mission that's being driven from above with our public safety mission in the New Orleans area, Little Rock, Jackson, everywhere across these 3 states. And I get that same sense from other special agents in charge. I talk to all of them. There are 30 of us across the country. Only 30, which is surprising, but there are 30 of us across the country, and we talk amongst ourselves about competing priorities and how we're going to refocus things and how we're going to adjust to this change in administration. Most of us have gotten ahead of it. We've already started to kind of reorganize our groups and our field offices to address the new immigration mandate while we address our public safety priorities.
I just had a question, if you could talk a little bit about the child exploitation, human trafficking, like why Shreveport, as I find within the Ochsner system, like we're learning from them on what to look for,
right.
And it's just interesting that Shreveport was so impacted by that.
So, and this is going to sound funny, but we didn't indict a single person in Shreveport. We indicted people from the court in Shreveport, but there wasn't a single target in Shreveport. So in that particular case, what happened, it was a spinoff of a child exploitation enterprise case. So legislatively what was created was a law called Child Exploitation Enterprise, which is similar to our RICO Act, our Racketeering, Influenced, Corrupt Organization Act, so that we could target these organizations, these groups that would seek to traffic or exploit children in some kind of way, sexually, but either by moving them physically or videos or images, however that might be. And so there was a case out of Indiana, and in that case in Indiana, they indicted a target that happened to be right outside of Monroe, actually very close to where Bonnie and Clyde were killed, funny enough, so near Gippsland. So we executed a search warrant on that house, and we got that guy into custody. And when we got the information from his machine and the ensuing interview and interrogation that I did with him, and the statements I got from him, and ultimately his cooperation, we were able to target a much larger organization known as the Dream Board. There is a Wikipedia page, believe it or not, on Operation DeLaune. That was the case. But when it happened, and of course, my prosecutor in the room is going to get this for me. But what happened when this case came together, they were trying to find a venue where they could actually conduct this investigation, a place that would have all or part of the crime having been committed. So the federal government, for you to prosecute, have venue, jurisdiction to prosecute a crime, they're all or part of that crime has to occur in a district, or it can be prosecuted out of the District of Columbia. So only a small part of that whole entire Dream Board crime had been committed in the Western District of Louisiana, out of Shreveport. But we knew we had a really conservative district. We knew we had really accessible and conservative judges. And it was the optimal place to assemble a large-scale investigation where we knew we would indict, as many people as we needed to, and the judges there would hold them accountable. So, and that's how it happened. So we indicted in that case 72 people worldwide. We got extradition from Kenya, which had never been done before. We had more trouble getting people out of Canada than we did Kenya, actually, because they thought our laws were draconian. But we did. We got targets out from all over the world, in every walk of life. Doctors, lawyers, command master chief from the Navy. I mean, it was intense. But yes, that was all based out of Shreveport. Now you also have a very strong Internet Crimes Against Children task force at Shreveport. And you've got at least one agent up there that works for me named Leslie Williams, who is amazing. She was actually very new in her career and landed that case that I ended up having to go over and help lead. And she is well known up there, and I mean, we have good partnerships with the hospitals and the schools, and through that ICAC, especially through the city marshal's office up there, Bossier City specifically. But that's probably one. A lot of connectivity. Anybody else?
You want to tell us anything about the Super Bowl?
Oh, yeah, that's coming. So, February, yes. So, December of 23, I got a letter from the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, and I was designated as the federal coordinating official for security resources for the Super Bowl. So, to be clear, the city of New Orleans is responsible for the Super Bowl, but they can't do it alone. Not unlike any other metropolitan area. They need help from the federal government. So they go through this process, which is an adjudication for a special event assessment rating, otherwise known as SEER. And it's done through the Department of Homeland Security. FEMA handles it specifically. And you make your case for your event being a SEER 1. Now, it goes without saying that every Super Bowl is going to be a SEER 1 event. It's just going to be that. They go through the machinations, and it gets approved as a SEER 1 event. That SEER 1 event for us starts on the Friday before Super Bowl and runs through Super Bowl. But there's a lot that happens in that week prior to Super Bowl. And the City of New Orleans Police Department is not fully staffed. It's just not. They've had a hard time doing that over the last few years. They've graduated a couple of academies recently, but it does not put a dent in the deficit they have for police officers in the city. So we support that. And there's funding for us, HSI specifically, and other DHS entities to support that. So as the coordinating official, I start reaching out to those other federal agencies within Department of Homeland Security and some outside to essentially gauge their level of commitment to supporting the Super Bowl and the event, and what assets in the way of personnel and equipment that they have to help support the event. So for instance, I go to the United States Coast Guard. I say, hey, listen, I'm the federal coordinating official, I need help. I got the Super Bowl, what assets do you have available? They've got helicopters, they've got boats, and they've got special response teams. They've got this complete portfolio of ways they can support an event like that. And so we started coordinating with them and with the city so we don't duplicate efforts on things. Because, of course, Customs and Border Protection also has an aviation and a marine unit. And so we're able to kind of utilize those assets on a rotational basis so that there's always coverage. And then, there's coordination with the Department of Defense for flyovers, for F-15s to keep the airspace clear, especially during the Super Bowl. We're working with, actually, Coast Guard took the lead on counter unmanned aerial surveillance platforms. So they're actually working on the anti-drone side of things for us. So there's a series of agencies. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms supplies us with bomb dogs and explosive ordnance disposal teams. The TSA, shockingly, the TSA supplies us with like almost 100 dogs that we can use to sniff for bombs and weapons and things like that. So that's hugely helpful. Yes, sir.
Eric, what about, Gerard just asked you about the Super Bowl. What about Mardi Gras? I'm sure it's going to be a lot different this year than the past.
Yes. So, yes.
Okay.
That's the short answer. Yes. Very different. There was a federal coordinator assigned for Mardi Gras. Mardi Gras was only a SEER level 2, which in years past it had only been a SEER level 3, which is very little input from us. SEER level 2 garners some input from us. They'll assign a federal coordinator and a federal coordination team, which is usually 3 people from different agencies within DHS. Over a year ago, they came to me and asked me if I wanted to be the federal coordinator for Mardi Gras 2, and I said no. And it wasn't because I didn't want to do it, it was because it puts a lot of pressure on my personnel specifically. Because not only are we trying to do our day-to-day stuff, but now we're also trying to coordinate with the city and the state and actually sheriff's offices too. The Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office is heavily involved in Super Bowl preparations. So Sheriff LaPinto is very much involved. So you see all of this happening and all these people working together, and I was like, I probably could manage going through Mardi Gras, but I didn't want to do that to my personnel, especially when there was another capable and competent leader within DHS who was available to do it. And of course, we would support her in her role as federal coordinator. Since the attack on January 1, of course, that's informing everything. That's informing how we're approaching Super Bowl. It's informing how we're going to approach Mardi Gras. It informed how we approach Sugar Bowl. For those of you who are at Sugar Bowl, I think Mike was talking about it. It was an incredible law enforcement presence. I had agents everywhere, and there were NOPD and troopers everywhere. Just to demonstrate the level of commitment to safety, right? So yes, that's informing how we're going to approach Mardi Gras. There's been a re-adjudication of Mardi Gras. It will now be a SEER 1 event. So that re-adjudication, Mardi Gras SEER 1 event will be February 21st now through March 4th. I've not actually fact-checked it, but I have a sense that that's probably the longest SEER 1 period that the government's ever adjudicated. It's a very long time. And it looks like we'll probably be coordinating that as well.
Will that affect us here in this region?
No, it'll mainly affect the New Orleans area and Jefferson Parish,
okay.
I think, parades. And I don't know that for sure. Don't quote me on that. I know for sure it'll affect New Orleans. I have a sense that it'll probably affect some stuff in Jefferson Parish. But for us, I don't know what that's going to look like. I really don't. When I look at Super Bowl, we're looking at a confined area, right? And when we're looking at Mardi Gras, if we're looking at 2 parishes, you're looking at maybe upwards of 35 or 40 parades over a 13-day period over multiple routes. So, it's going to take a very frank conversation between, amongst myself, New Orleans Homeland Security Director, the JP Homeland Security Director, and these Mardi Gras crew captains to figure out what that might look like. So, but no, I would not expect that that's going to impact anything here. but you can expect it's gonna have some level of impact on New Orleans and Jefferson Parish, for sure. Yes. Anybody else? You can ask me anything, I'm here. Yeah, go ahead.
So when you were air marshal, what does the job description of air marshal, what did your work week look like for you? Were you in an office, were you on a plane?
So I gotta tell you, ultimately why I left was because I felt like my life was up in the air. It was, sorry, I couldn't help it. No, I mean, that's it, you're up in the air a lot. The job was flying. I gotta tell you, when I got the phone call, they called me and said, hey, are you still interested in the air marshal job? And I said, yeah, absolutely. So this lady goes off, I mean, I don't even think she took a breath. We're gonna fly to Atlantic City, we're gonna do your physical assessment, you're gonna take your written test, you're gonna do a psychological assessment, which I did pass. And you're gonna do this, and you're gonna do that, and you're gonna do this, and you're gonna do that, and after this, you're gonna do this, and then you have to go to the academy, and you're gonna do all that. And at the end of it, she says, all right, so, I mean, I haven't heard all that, do you still want the job? And I said, yes. I said, you said you guys are gonna fly me to Atlantic City for all these assessments. I'm a little nervous about flying, can I take a train? There was silence. And then she said, you know, you have to fly. And of course I told her I was kidding. I got on a plane and it worked out. But so yeah, so we flew 5 days a week, most weeks. And the routes were all over the country. About the time I left, it was all over the world. This number of air marshals is still, and I have no idea what the number is, but it's still a classified amount, and our routes are classified. So I don't really know how many are left or how many are still operating. I assume it's still fairly robust. But yes, we flew. We were in travel status, 8 to 12 hours a day, 5 days a week, following 9/11. So it was a lot. And you know, occasionally they'll rotate people out to handle training, or they'll rotate people out to assign them to joint terrorism task forces and things like that. But for the most part, those air marshals are flying 4 to 5 days a week, week in and week out. Yeah, for sure. Somebody else back there? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking about these radical Islamic terrorists that come across the border from Mexico. Is there any concern with coordinated attacks that's going to happen in the U.S. or Americans?
Well, I can say this. Wow, that's a big question. Yeah. I mean, yes. I mean, the short answer is yes. I mean, so it sounds like doublespeak. We don't know what we don't know. I know our agency and the FBI and some of the higher side organizations, you know, they're all tracking stuff, and our intel people are all collaborating and working together. I mean, that's always a concern. It's always a concern. It's part of, even with a secure border, it's still part of the problem when you have an open society. They're dealing with that in other countries as well. And heck, even communist countries have problems with terror attacks. You know, where they absolutely control their borders. I mean, it's happening. So we're gonna. I mean, all I can tell you is that there is an active daily effort to monitor intelligence activity, chatter, as people refer to it, and we continue to support those agencies that are actively working those terror investigations and the terror threats. But yeah, it's always in the back of your mind. Look, I think part of the reason our response to January 1, and look, watching the news, you would not have had any confidence in what happened January 1st. But being there and having agents on the ground, I can tell you the agents on the ground and law enforcement response was spot on for that. Now, there may have been some issues with press releases. You know, there may have been some issues with people misspeaking or, you know, just giving wrong information at times. But from a ground level, there was a lot of good work going on. A lot of good work going on. Work I would expect to happen. And, you know, I attribute a lot of that to our connectivity as a law enforcement community in New Orleans. The special agents in charge from every federal agency, myself included, we all speak on a regular basis. We have breakfast every other Friday just to maintain some level of continuity. We're all connected to the chiefs and sheriffs in the area. They all have my phone number. I have all theirs. Believe me, it was blowing up January 1 from all of those different entities. They were calling and asking questions, and we were checking in and coordinating. And it also helped that we were preparing for Super Bowl, so all that stuff was fresh. But I can tell you, my concern is, and always will be, those black swan events, those high-impact, low-frequency events that people are not ready for, generally are not ready for. And that's kind of what I preach to my people, like be available, be ready, have a go bag in your car, make sure your radios are working, make sure your equipment is clean and can function. I mean, that's all we can do as far as response is concerned. On the mitigation or investigation or prevention side of it, we're already doing that. And I mean, we do it as well as we can within the confines of some of the limitations placed now in the Patriot Act and, of course, the Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment is there to protect all of us, and it's we take it seriously. We work within those confines. I'll be around for a few minutes after if somebody wants to talk.
Eric, thank you very much. Excellent presentation. Thank you very much for enlightening us on our public safety and where you've come from and where you've gone, and you've come back to us. And it's exciting to know that we have successful people like yourself. If I may remind you about the renewals, we have renewals we sent out. If you didn't get them, let me know. We'll send them again. It's also good to see a lot of new people here. If you're interested in becoming a member of AIC, let us know. We're excited about AIC. This is our third year. We think we've got a good product out there for the industry and the people in the community. So if you're interested, let us know. And again, we thank all the corporate sponsors that we had the last 2 years. That was very important to our success. And next month, our next meeting will be February the 10th. Our guest speaker will be Mr. Gordy Dove of CPRA. He's here today, visited just to take a look over. He's a very important person, an individual to our community and the parish and all of Louisiana. He's been very good to us. Everybody be careful going home. Be careful, and